Chapter 1. On Thanksgiving 2021, my mother told me not to come home because my sister needed peace. So 2 years later, I legally changed my last name, replaced my parents at my wedding, and watched them walk out while the entire room applauded someone else as the parents of the bride. My name is Alara Whitaker, and this is how my family erased me first, and how I erased the version of myself that kept begging to stay. Thanksgiving 2021 was the first year I realized I could disappear from my own family and no one would come looking. I was 32, living in a narrow one-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill, Seattle. I had moved there in 2014 with 2 suitcases and a job offer from a mid-sized branding firm downtown. By 2021, I was a senior brand strategist at Northline Creative, the kind of title that sounds impressive at dinner parties and means you spend most of your time fixing other people's ideas. My family still lived in Spokane, about 4 hours away. My mother, Diane Whitaker, had retired from teaching 2nd grade, but never retired from managing everyone's image. My father, Mark Whitaker, was a CPA who believed conflict was something you filed away and never spoke about again. My older sister, Lauren, was the golden child. She sold real estate, married her college boyfriend in 2012, and had 2 boys who are now 8 and 5. Every Christmas card featured her smiling family in coordinated outfits. I was usually somewhere at the edge of the frame. I learned early that being low maintenance meant being invisible. When I turned 16, my birthday dinner was canceled because Lauren had an important college prep interview. Mom said we would celebrate the next weekend. We never did. In 2011, when I graduated from the University of Washington, my parents arrived halfway through the ceremony. Lauren had needed help reviewing paperwork for her first real estate licensing exam. I remember scanning the bleachers for them, seeing empty seats where they should have been, and telling myself not to make a scene. Anytime I tried to say it hurt, my mother would tilt her head and say I was too sensitive, that everything was not about me. My father would clear his throat and suggest we move on. Silence was his specialty. I grew up thinking maybe the problem was my expectations. 3 days before Thanksgiving in 2021, my phone rang while I was finishing a presentation deck for a client in San Francisco. It was my mother. I almost did not answer, which in hindsight feels symbolic. She did not bother with small talk. She said, "Honey, I think it would be better if you stayed in Seattle this year. Lauren has a lot going on and we just want to keep things calm. You know how tense holidays can get." I knew exactly what she meant. She meant I asked too many questions. She meant I did not pretend everything was perfect. She meant I remembered. I asked, "So I am the problem?" She sighed in that tired martyr way she had perfected. "Please do not start. We are just trying to avoid drama. It is one Thanksgiving. You can come at Christmas." It was not one Thanksgiving. It was a pattern. After we hung up, I sat there staring at my laptop screen. The slide deck blurred. I picked up my phone again and called my dad. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, kiddo." I told him what Mom had said. I asked him, "Do you actually want me there?" There was a long pause. I could hear the television in the background. I could hear him breathing. Finally, he said, "Maybe this year it is easier if you listen to your mom. You know how Lauren gets when she feels stressed." In that moment, I realized something I had been circling my entire life. Silence is a choice. Not protecting someone is also a decision. I said, "Okay." We hung up. Thanksgiving morning came gray and cold. Seattle rain tapped against my window like someone trying to get my attention. I made coffee and waited for my phone to light up. I told myself maybe they would call anyway. Maybe my mom would feel guilty. Maybe my dad would change his mind. Nothing. Around noon, I opened Instagram. I do not know why. Maybe I wanted proof that I was wrong. Lauren had posted a photo of the dining room table. My mother's china, the one she only used for holidays, was set out in perfect symmetry. My nephews were smiling, their hair combed neatly. My parents stood behind them. Lauren's husband had his arm around her waist. I zoomed in. There were exactly 6 place settings. My parents, Lauren, and her husband, 2 kids. No extra chair tucked at the end. No name card that could have been mine. It was not that there was not room, it was that no one had made room. I felt no surge of anger, just a hollow quiet, like someone had scooped something out of my chest and left a clean space behind. For a moment, I considered staying home, ordering takeout, telling myself I preferred solitude. I almost convinced myself I was too busy for family anyway. That narrative had always been easier. Instead, I stood up. I showered. I put on a sweater and boots. If I was going to be alone, I did not have to be lonely in my own apartment. I searched online for restaurants open for Thanksgiving and found one near the waterfront that still had reservations. I booked a table for one at 5:30. The restaurant was warm and loud, full of families leaning close over mashed potatoes and pie. The hostess smiled kindly when she saw my name on the reservation. "Just you tonight?" she asked. "Just me." She seated me at a small two-top near the back. I ordered a glass of red wine and tried not to look at the tables around me. Laughter bounced off the walls. Someone's grandmother was telling a story about the 70s. A toddler was throwing stuffing on the floor. I felt like I was watching life happen from behind glass. That was when a woman with silver hair and bright eyes approached my table. She looked to be in her mid-60s, wearing a deep green sweater and the kind of confidence that comes from decades of being heard. "Are you waiting for someone?" she asked. "No," I smiled politely. "Just having dinner." She glanced over at the long table behind her where a large family sat, squeezed together, passing dishes and talking over one another. "Well, no one should eat alone on Thanksgiving if they do not want to. We have room." "I insist." I hesitated. Everything in me was trained to decline, to not inconvenience anyone. "I am Alara," I said finally. "Margaret Caldwell," she replied. "Most people call me Maggie." "Come on." She did not give me much time to overthink. I picked up my wine and followed her. Her husband scooted over to make space. A man in his late 30s with kind eyes introduced himself as Ryan, her son. 2 young girls waved at me shyly. Plates were rearranged. Someone passed me the gravy. Maggie asked me where I was from, and when I told her, she said, "Well, for tonight, you are from here." They did not ask why I was alone in a way that felt invasive. They did not try to fix me. They simply included me. At one point, Ryan's daughter asked if I wanted to help her build a tower out of sugar packets. I laughed, and the sound surprised me. It felt unfamiliar in my own mouth. For the first time that day, I was not bracing for criticism. I was not monitoring my tone. I was not waiting to be told I was too much. I was just there. When dinner ended, Maggie squeezed my hand and said we do Sunday dinners most weeks. "If you ever feel like joining, you have my number." I thanked her genuinely. As I walked back into the cold Seattle night, I told myself it had just been a kind gesture from strangers. A warm interruption in an otherwise quiet holiday. I did not know then that this was the night the outline of my life began to shift. I only knew that for the first time in a long time, I did not feel like a problem that needed to be managed. I felt like a person who had been invited to sit down. Chapter 2. The following Sunday, I almost did not go. Maggie had texted me the address in West Seattle, and a time 5:00 casual, "Bring nothing but yourself." I stared at the message for a full minute before typing back that I would be there. I had spent years convincing myself I did not need to be included. Accepting an invitation felt more vulnerable than declining one. Their house was warm in a way that had nothing to do with the thermostat. A modest craftsman with a sagging porch swing and wind chimes that rang softly in the December air. When I knocked, the door swung open before I finished lowering my hand. "You made it," Maggie said, pulling me into a hug that felt instinctive, not polite. Inside, Thomas was arguing gently with someone about how long to roast a chicken. Ryan was at the kitchen counter chopping vegetables. Two little girls were sprawled on the living room rug, building something out of blocks. "This is the architect," Maggie said, gesturing toward Ryan. "He thinks he knows everything." Ryan grinned. "Only about buildings." I slipped off my boots and stood there awkwardly for a second, unsure where to put myself. That was when Ryan handed me a cutting board. "You good with carrots?" he asked. I nodded. "I am good with instructions." He looked at me sideways. That sounds ominous. It was the first of many Sunday dinners. Weeks turned into months. I learned that Thomas liked his steak rare and his stories long. I learned that Maggie had practiced family law for almost 30 years and could dismantle a bad argument in under a minute. I learned that Ryan had sworn off serious relationships after a brutal breakup in his early 30s, the kind that leaves you convinced commitment is a trap. It should have felt temporary, a seasonal kindness. Instead, it began to feel routine, almost expected. No one made a ceremony out of my presence. They simply set an extra plate. By early spring, Ryan and I were texting outside of Sundays. It started with shared articles about architecture and marketing trends, then slipped into late-night conversations about childhood and fear. One evening in April after dinner, we stayed behind in the kitchen while Maggie and Thomas took the girls home. Ryan leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "I do not really do serious," he said casually. I blinked. I was not sure what we were doing, but I knew what that sentence meant. "You do not have to reassure me," I said. "I am not asking for anything." He studied my face. "I am not trying to push you away. I just do not want to pretend I am someone who wants the whole white picket fence thing." My chest tightened in a way that felt embarrassingly familiar. For a second, I was 16 again, told to be less complicated. I heard myself respond sharper than I intended. "No one is asking you for a fence, Ryan. I am fine on my own." He frowned. "I am not saying you are not. I just want to be honest." Honesty felt like rejection. I pulled back. For a week, I skipped Sunday dinner. On Wednesday, Maggie called. "Are you alive?" she asked. "Barely." She laughed softly. "Ryan is sulking. He thinks he scared you off." "He did not scare me off," I said. "I just do not want to sign up to be temporary." There was a pause. Then she said something that stayed with me. "Family is not the absence of conflict, Alara. It is the refusal to exile someone when conflict shows up." I did not respond right away. "You do not get removed for asking for clarity here," she added. "That is not how this works." That Sunday I went back. Ryan met me at the door. "I am not good at this," he admitted. "But I am trying." Trying was new. No one in my family had ever tried with me. They had adjusted me, minimized me, dismissed me. Trying felt like effort directed toward me, not away from me. We talked that night. Not dramatically, not perfectly, but honestly. He admitted he was afraid of failing at marriage. I admitted I was afraid of being optional. We did not fix everything. We simply stayed. Around that same time, I thought a lot about something my therapist, Dr. Elena Ruiz, had told me back in 2020. You do not have to earn love. I had been sitting on a gray couch in her office in downtown Seattle, explaining for the 100th time why I felt guilty for wanting more from my parents. "Alara," she said gently, "you talk about love like it is a performance review." I remember staring at the bookshelf behind her. If I am easy, I stay. If I am difficult, I get removed. "That sounds exhausting," she replied. It was. Sundays at Maggie's house began to chip away at that belief. No one graded my mood. No one told me to be quieter. When I disagreed about politics or parenting, no one accused me of ruining the atmosphere. In October 2022, I received a call from my managing director at Northline Creative. "We are promoting you to Director of Brand Strategy," he said. "You earned it." I hung up and sat in my office staring at the city skyline. I had worked for that promotion for years. I called my parents out of habit. My mother let it go to voicemail. My father texted back 2 hours later. Congrats. Proud of you. No exclamation point. No follow-up questions. Lauren never called. That Sunday at dinner, Maggie raised a glass of sparkling water. To Alara, she said, "We always knew you were more than you thought." Ryan squeezed my hand under the table. It was a small moment, but it landed somewhere deep. 2 weeks later, I had to drive to Spokane for a client presentation. Afterward, I stopped at a grocery store to pick up snacks for the road. I was halfway down the cereal aisle when I heard my name. Alara. I turned. Lauren stood there in yoga leggings and a tailored coat, one of her sons clinging to her hand. She looked polished, unbothered. "I did not know you were in town," she said. "I am here for work." She nodded as if that explained everything and nothing. "Mom said you did not come last Thanksgiving because you were busy," she added lightly. I felt something shift inside me. A year ago, I would have corrected her. I would have defended myself. I would have explained. Instead, I said I was not busy. She blinked. "Oh." There was a silence. Her son tugged at her sleeve. "We should get together sometime," she said automatically. "Maybe," I replied. I did not apologize. I did not soften it. I did not fill the space. As I walked away, I realized I had done something new. I had not tried to make her comfortable at my expense. That winter, Ryan asked me to meet him at the same waterfront restaurant where Maggie had first invited me to her table. The hostess recognized him. "Back again," she said. "Something like that," he answered. We sat at a small table near the window. The lights from the ferries reflected on the water. "I have been thinking," he began, fingers tapping nervously against his glass. "About what you said. About being optional." I held my breath. "You are not optional to me, Alara. I am scared, but I am more scared of not trying with you." He reached into his jacket pocket. My brain registered the movement before my heart did. He got down on one knee, awkward and earnest. "Will you marry me?" The room around us seemed to blur. All I could see was his face, hopeful and terrified. "Yes," I said. "Yes." Applause broke out from somewhere behind us. I laughed through tears I did not expect. Later that night, lying in bed, I opened my email to look at the wedding planning checklist a friend had sent. I scrolled past venues and catering options until I reached a line that made my chest tighten. Parents of the bride. I stared at the words. I pictured my mother straightening the hem of her dress. I pictured my father standing quietly beside her. I pictured the weight of my last name printed elegantly on an invitation. Whitaker. For the first time, I felt resistance to it. Not anger. Resistance. I did not want to begin something new carrying the same quiet permission that had allowed me to be removed. I closed my laptop and lay back staring at the ceiling. Somewhere between Thanksgiving 2021 and that night, something had shifted. I had been invited to sit down and I had stayed. Now I had to decide who I wanted standing beside me when I stood at the altar. Chapter 3. The question would not leave me alone. It followed me through meetings at Northline Creative, through menu tastings and venue tours, through late-night conversations with Ryan about guest lists and playlists. Every time I saw the phrase, "parents of the bride" on a wedding planning document, my stomach tightened. One Sunday in January 2023, after dinner at Maggie and Thomas's house, I stayed behind while Ryan took the trash out. Maggie was rinsing dishes at the sink when I said it. "I do not think I want my parents listed on the invitations." She turned off the water slowly and dried her hands on a towel. "That sounds like more than a formatting issue," she said gently. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wood grain. "I do not want to start my marriage pretending everything is fine." Thomas leaned back in his chair. "You do not have to pretend here." I swallowed. "I do not know if I am being dramatic." Maggie pulled out a chair across from me. "Alara, I practiced family law for 30 years. I have seen dramatic. This is not dramatic. This is clarity. Ryan came back inside and sensed the shift immediately. He looked from me to his parents. What did I miss? I hesitated, then said it out loud for the first time. I do not think I want to be a Whitaker anymore. Silence settled over the room, not tense, just attentive. Ryan sat beside me. You do not have to keep anything that hurts you. Maggie studied my face. There is another option, you know. I knew she had something specific in mind. What option? I asked. Adult adoption, she said calmly. It is legal in Washington. If you wanted to formalize what already feels true, you could. My pulse quickened. I had heard of adult adoption in passing, mostly in the context of inheritance disputes or stepfamilies. I had never imagined it applying to me. I am 33, I said. Is that even normal? Thomas chuckled softly. Normal is overrated, Maggie continued, her voice measured. Through King County Superior Court, you can petition for adult adoption. It would legally change your last name. Your birth certificate could be amended. Your next of kin designation would reflect the new relationship. It would also affect inheritance and estate planning, which is probably why your mother would not like it. The last part landed. I leaned back in my chair. It sounds extreme. Ryan reached for my hand. It sounds intentional. That night, I barely slept. The idea felt both liberating and terrifying. I imagined my mother's reaction. I imagined my father's silence. I imagined Christmas cards arriving addressed to Alara Caldwell. The next week, I scheduled a consultation with a family law attorney in downtown Seattle. I needed someone who was not emotionally invested. Her office overlooked Elliott Bay. She was in her early 40s, composed, practical. So you are considering adult adoption? She said after I explained the situation. Yes, I want to know what it actually means. She outlined the process. Filing a petition, court approval, consent from the adoptive parents. Once finalized, my legal name would change. My birth certificate could be reissued. For legal purposes, I would be recognized as the child of the adoptive parents. My biological parents would no longer be my next of kin. This is not symbolic, she said. It is legal. I nodded. It can also complicate inheritance on both sides, she added. If your biological parents have a will, they can adjust it, but you would not automatically have standing as their child anymore. I almost laughed. Standing had never felt automatic in that house. Driving back to my apartment, I thought about Thanksgiving 2021, about zooming into that photo and counting chairs. I remembered the hollow feeling the way I told myself I should not expect more. I am not deleting them, I told myself. I am choosing not to continue the pattern. 2 weeks later, a cousin posted photos from my bridal shower in Tacoma. Pink and gold balloons, a banner with my new last name written in glitter, Alara Caldwell to be. My phone started vibrating within an hour. My mother called 3 times. I let it ring. Then she texted, "What is this I am seeing online?" Before I could respond, my father called. "Your mother is upset," he began. "When is she not?" I replied quietly. "She says you are changing your name." "I am." Another pause. "Can we meet and talk about this?" he asked. My chest tightened, but not the way it used to. "What would we talk about?" I asked. "About why you feel the need to do this." I closed my eyes. "Dad, when Mom told me not to come home for Thanksgiving, what did you do?" Silence. "Did you tell her that was wrong?" I pressed. He exhaled. "I did not want to make it worse." "You did nothing." He did not argue. "I cannot keep living in a family where doing nothing is the norm," I said. "I am still your father," he replied weakly. "I am not saying you are not," I said. "I am saying you did not protect me." He asked again to meet. I declined. I do not think talking will change what happened, I said, and I am tired of hoping it will. In May 2023, we filed the petition. The hearing itself was brief. A courtroom in downtown Seattle, fluorescent lights, a judge flipping through paperwork. You understand this is a permanent legal change, she said. I do. Ryan stood beside me. Maggie and Thomas sat behind us. The judge smiled faintly. Congratulations. Just like that, I was legally Alara Caldwell. I walked out of the courthouse feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. The reaction from my family was immediate. My mother left a voicemail that night. How could you embarrass us like this? She demanded. People are asking questions. Do you have any idea how this looks? I stared at my phone before calling her back. I did not do this to embarrass you, I said when she answered. You erased us, she snapped. I did not erase you. I stopped continuing. You are being dramatic, she said. I felt the old instinct to defend myself to shrink. Instead, I said, I am not cutting you to make you hurt. I am cutting you because I was hurting. She scoffed. You are overreacting. Maybe, I replied calmly, but it is my reaction to have. A week later, I came home from work to find her standing inside my apartment. For a split second, I thought I was hallucinating. How did you get in? I demanded. I still have a key, she said, as if that explained everything. The familiarity of it all nearly made me laugh. The assumption of access, the belief that doors remained open by default. You need to give that back, I said. She crossed her arms. You are making a spectacle of this family. People in Spokane are talking. I live in Seattle, I replied. I do not care who is talking in Spokane. Her face flushed. We raised you. And I am grateful, I said evenly. But you do not get to manage my life because you are worried about appearances. You have humiliated us, she said. I looked at her and felt something new. Not anger, not guilt, distance. I did not humiliate you, I said quietly. You are embarrassed because I stopped pretending. She stared at me as if she did not recognize me. For the first time, I did not rush to repair the silence. When she left, I locked the door and leaned against it, heart pounding but steady. 3 months until the wedding. 3 months until I would stand in front of everyone and say my new name out loud. My family knew now. They were angry. They felt exposed. And for the first time in my life, I did not feel afraid of that. Chapter 4. September arrived faster than I expected. Cape Cod was bright that afternoon, the sky a clear, impossible blue, the kind that makes everything feel cinematic. The ceremony was set on a stretch of lawn overlooking the water in Chatham. White chairs lined up in neat rows. Soft music floated through the air as guests found their seats. I stood in the bridal suite, smoothing the fabric of my dress over my hips, staring at my reflection. Alara Caldwell. I whispered it once under my breath just to hear how it sounded. Ryan stepped into the room already in his suit, his tie slightly crooked. You okay? He asked. I think so, I said. He walked over and adjusted the strap of my dress where it had twisted. Whatever happens today, I am here. I nodded. I know. When we walked outside, I caught sight of the first few rows filling up. Maggie and her husband Daniel were greeting guests. My friend Claire from work waved at me from the second row. Then I saw them. My parents stood near the back, stiff and formal, my mother in a navy dress that looked chosen for photographs. My father beside her, hands clasped in front of him. My sister Brooke was not with them. Later, I would learn she had decided it was better to stay home. They had found out about the venue through our public wedding website. I knew that when I made it visible. I had considered password protecting it. I had decided not to. Ryan saw my gaze shift. "They showed up," he said quietly. "I know." "Do you want them turned away?" he asked. I took a breath. "No, let them sit." They were escorted to seats in the last row, not by accident. As the music swelled and I began walking down the aisle, I felt eyes on me from every direction. I kept my focus on Ryan. I did not look toward the back. The ceremony itself felt suspended in time. Vows spoken clearly, rings exchanged, applause rising around us. When the officiant pronounced us married, I felt a release that had nothing to do with my family. The tension returned during the reception. The ballroom overlooked the ocean. Tables were set with white linens and candles flickering softly. Laughter filled the room as guests found their places. I knew what was coming next. The introductions. Our coordinator handed the microphone to the MC, a close friend of Ryan's family. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, smiling broadly, "it is my honor to introduce the parents of the bride." I saw my mother straighten in her chair in the back. She adjusted her necklace and glanced around as if preparing for a spotlight. The MC continued, "Please join me in welcoming Margaret and Daniel Caldwell." For a split second there was silence as the words landed. Then applause broke out across the room. Maggie stood, her face bright with emotion. Daniel rose beside her, placing a steady hand at her back. They walked toward the dance floor, guests clapping, some cheering. I did not look at my parents immediately. I did not need to. When I finally turned my head, my mother's face had drained of color. Her mouth was slightly open. My father's hands trembled at his sides. From the corner of my eye, I saw my Aunt Carol stand up from a table near the middle of the room and walk toward me. She had driven down from Connecticut alone. She reached me and squeezed my arm. "I am proud of you," she whispered. My mother was already moving down the aisle between tables, heels clicking sharply against the floor. She stopped a few feet in front of me. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice low but urgent. The music had faded slightly. Conversations quieted. People pretended not to listen. "You replaced us," she said. I met her gaze evenly. "I did not replace you," I replied. "I chose differently." "You embarrassed us in front of everyone," she hissed. "I am not responsible for how you feel about my choices." My father stepped closer, but did not interrupt. "You are our daughter," my mother said. "I was your daughter when you told me not to come home for Thanksgiving," I said calmly. "I was your daughter when you let me sit alone in my apartment and pretend it did not matter." Her jaw tightened. "That was one holiday," she snapped. "It was not one holiday," I said. "It was a pattern." She glanced around, aware of the eyes on us. "You are being vindictive," she said. "I am not being vindictive," I replied. "I am being honest. I did not cut you to hurt you. I cut you because I was hurting." My father finally spoke. "We never meant to hurt you," he said quietly. "I know," I answered. "You just never meant to protect me either." The words hung in the air. Behind me, Maggie stepped forward. Her voice was steady. "We did not take her from you," she said. "You let her drift away." My mother's eyes flashed. "You think you can just take someone else's child?" Maggie did not flinch. "She is not a child. She is a woman who asked to be recognized." Security, hired discreetly for the event, moved closer. Not aggressively, just present. Ryan stepped beside me and placed his hand at the small of my back. "This is not the place," he said firmly. "Please respect that." My mother looked at him as if seeing him clearly for the first time. "You encouraged this," she accused. "I supported her," he replied. There was a difference. Guests were openly watching now. Conversations had stopped entirely. The narrative my mother had curated for decades was unraveling in real time. Finally, my father touched her arm. "Let's go," he murmured. She resisted for a moment, then turned sharply and walked toward the exit. My father followed, shoulders slightly hunched. As they reached the doors, a few guests stepped aside to let them pass. No one called after them. No one defended them. The doors closed. The music resumed hesitantly at first, then stronger. Someone laughed too loudly, trying to ease the tension. I stood there for a moment, my heart pounding but steady. Ryan leaned close. "You okay?" he asked. "I am," I said. And I meant it. I walked to the center of the dance floor. Maggie and Daniel were waiting. They pulled me into a loose embrace before stepping back to give us space. The band started playing something upbeat. Claire grabbed my hand and spun me in a circle. Laughter returned to the room, real and unforced. For the first time in my life, I did not apologize for existing in a space. I did not look toward the doors again. I did not need to. Chapter 5. The quiet after the wedding was louder than the confrontation itself. For weeks, my phone buzzed with messages from numbers I had not heard from in years. Cousins, old neighbors, even my mother's former colleagues. Some of them were supportive. Others were careful, choosing words like complicated and unfortunate. A few were blunt. "I cannot believe you would do that to your parents." I learned quickly who saw the event as betrayal and who saw it as clarity. My Aunt Carol called the Monday after we returned from Cape Cod. "I should have said something years ago," she told me. "You were never the problem." Her voice shook slightly. She had always stayed neutral, which in my family meant siding with the louder person. Hearing her say that felt like a small correction in the universe. On the other side of the family tree, reactions were less generous. My mother stopped calling altogether. My father sent one short text. "We need time." For once, I agreed. By late October, whispers about the wedding had made their way back to Spokane. A former client of my sister Brooks saw photos online and asked her about the public confrontation. Real estate thrives on reputation. So does gossip. In November, Brooke lost a listing she had been counting on, a waterfront property that would have meant a significant commission. The sellers told her they wanted someone who did not have personal drama circulating on social media. She called me one evening. "You ruined things for me," she said without greeting. "I did not mention you in my vows," I replied. "You made Mom look terrible." "I did not invent anything," I said calmly. I stopped hiding it. There was a long silence. "My son asked why you do not come around anymore," she added quietly. "What did you tell him?" "I said you were busy." I almost smiled at the familiarity of that word. "Maybe you can tell him the truth one day," I said, "that sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices." She did not respond. In December, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Not an email, not a text. An actual envelope with my father's handwriting. I recognized it immediately. I carried it to the kitchen table and stared at it for several minutes before opening it. "Ilara, I am sorry for the ways I failed you. I see now that silence protected no one. I thought keeping the peace was love. I understand that it felt like abandonment. I do not expect forgiveness. I only want you to know that I am trying to understand. Dad." I read it twice. For a moment I considered calling him. The urge to restore something to make it easier for him rose instinctively. Then I set the letter down. Understanding is not the same as repair. I placed the letter in a drawer and closed it gently. Not out of spite, out of boundary. Life did not pause while we sorted through the fallout. In early 2024, I was promoted again at Northline Creative. Vice President of Brand Strategy. The title came with a corner office and more responsibility than sleep some weeks, but it also came with recognition that felt earned, not negotiated. Ryan surprised me with flowers the day the promotion was announced. "You are unstoppable," he said, grinning. "I am just stubborn," I replied. We bought a small house in Ballard that summer. Nothing extravagant. A blue Craftsman with uneven floors and a backyard big enough for a swing set someday. In March 2025, I gave birth to our first child, a daughter with dark hair and a fierce cry. We named her Clara June Caldwell. When the nurse asked for the baby's full name for the birth certificate, I did not hesitate. Caldwell. No part of me flinched. A few months later, we welcomed a second child, a boy we named Henry Thomas Caldwell after Ryan's father. Sleep became fragmented. The house became louder. My heart felt impossibly full. My mother did not call when Clara was born. My father sent a short email congratulating us and asking for a photo. I sent one. A simple picture of Clara wrapped in a hospital blanket. He responded with thank you. That was the extent of it. Thanksgiving 2025 arrived quietly. We hosted at our house in Ballard. Maggie and Daniel came over early to help cook. Claire brought pie. Ryan was in the backyard attempting to deep fry a turkey with the confidence of someone who had watched too many instructional videos. Clara toddled between the adults clutching a plastic spoon. Henry gurgled in his high chair. At one point, I stepped back from the table to look at the room. The chairs were not perfectly arranged. The napkins did not match. The turkey was slightly overdone on one side, but there was space for everyone who wanted to be there. I did not check my phone that afternoon. I did not wait for it to light up. I did not brace for disappointment. Maggie caught my eye from across the table. "You okay?" she asked softly. "I am," I said, and I was. Not because everything had been resolved, not because apologies had fixed the past, but because I had stopped trying to earn a place that was never freely given. Later that evening, after the dishes were stacked and the children were asleep, Ryan and I sat on the couch, exhaustion settling into our bones. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Changing my name? Everything." I thought about my father's letter, about my sister's accusation, about the way my mother's face had looked at the reception. "I regret that it had to be this way," I said. "I do not regret choosing us." He nodded. For years, I believed boundaries were punishments, that drawing a line meant I was cruel. Now I understand they are instructions. They tell people how to love you. And when someone refuses to follow them, they reveal themselves. Family is not defined by who shares your blood. It is defined by who stays when staying is inconvenient. I do not hate my parents. I do not wish them harm. I simply no longer shape myself around their comfort. The hollow space I felt in 2021 has been filled with something steadier, not revenge, relief. If you have ever been the child who learned to be easy, to be quiet, to be grateful for scraps of attention, I want you to consider this. Where does your boundary begin?